In case you haven't noticed, Big Brother has a bit of an obsession with casting extremely southern redneck types. Characters whose entire identity is built around having a thick accent and doing stuff outdoors.
The country boy.
For a country boy like me.
And I'm from Virginia, from the mountains. This is mountain speak.
This isn't exactly a new phenomenon in Big Brother casting, but over the past 9 years or so, the redneck archetype has reached new heights. They've become ubiquitous, standardized, an expected part of each and every cast, with one notable exception. Whenever a new season premieres, it's pretty much a guarantee that you'll be hearing that twangy guitar music within the first 5 minutes of the broadcast. Some of these country folk have been beloved by America, others not so much. But if you thought the BB Redneck was maybe going to take a back seat due to a recent change in leadership, it's safe to say this archetype remains alive and well.
As a little girl that grew up on a farm washing mess off of eggs, like
it's more slippery than a greased hog at the state fair. A lightning bug's length from the butt crack of a donkey.
Perhaps my outlook has been permanently altered by Farmer French, but I've been thinking a lot about this character type and its place in BB history. Why has it become such a staple feature of the show, and where exactly was the turning point? I'm a bit biased, but allow me to make the argument that everything changed because of him, the King. His Majesty J-U-D-D, the Stud Party Darty. First of his name, long may he reign.
I'm a huge fan of Judd because we love Judd.
A light in the darkness of trying times, a defender of the downtrodden, a relatable everyman who captured the affection of casuals and superfans alike. Not for particularly great gameplay necessarily, but simply for the fact that he was nice and funny. A classic underdog to root for, especially when paired opposite the extra villainous villains of BB-15. But no sooner had we gotten to know him before he was snatched away from us in one of the most infamous, heartbreaking double evictions in the show's history. Tales of which are still told today.
Was when Jude went home, when Helen got everyone to get Jude out. If you remember that, you remember when Helen was... Is it Judd? I'm sorry, Judd.
No, I didn't. I mean,
no, it is Judd.
Was that 15?
I guess.
I didn't watch 15.
Okay.
I think it's time to revisit the story of Jude, aka Judd, especially since I suspect some newer fans may have skipped right on by this controversial season. This video will be a character analysis breaking down Judd's narrative and gameplay, how he personified the familiar tropes of the reality TV redneck, how he compares to some of his country predecessors, and why I think the Big Brother producers have been attempting to recreate that Judd magic every year for nearly a decade, to varying levels of success. And since I'm always in pursuit of a Twistos twist, I'll also tell you how I cracked the case of a Judd-based mystery I've been trying to solve for 9 years. This is the story of how some dude they found out in the woods in East Tennessee became one of America's favorites, and why even though you could barely understand anything he said, he made a significant impact on Big Brother for years to come. This is the Judd Connection. But first, I should be upfront about something. I can't really be objective here because I was Team Judd from minute one.
My name is Judd. I'm from Englewood, Tennessee. I'm from a town with 2 red lights and 2 gas stations, so...
See, Judd is from here, a small town just down the road from where I grew up in Chattanooga, Tennessee. For the first time, a fellow representative of the 423 area code would be playing Big Brother.
Something this big don't happen in McMinn County.
The only other time our area has gotten exposure was because Fessy played for the UTC Mocs. And yeah, well...
Chattanooga, go Mocs.
Now, I'm probably the least redneck person you can find. If I were on Big Brother, they could just replay the Ronnie footage. But trust me, I've been among the Judds of the world all my life, and thus feel it is my duty to analyze why the particular flavor of bumpkin from our neck of the woods worked well on this show. But before we dive into Judd's story, let's do a quick review of those who came before. Goofy rednecks have always been part of the formula for reality TV.
First person voted out of Survivor China. Chicken.
It's a simple premise when building out an ensemble cast. Grab some tough-talking East Coasters, some California people, and see how they interact with someone who just walked out of a Cracker Barrel. Obviously, Judd was not the first quirky redneck to play the game, but I think part of what made his character so enjoyable to watch was that he was a perfect combination of memorable traits from some of his southern predecessors. I'd like to call out a few of these characters and traits here on the road to Judd, because even from the get-go, Big Brother casting looked towards Judd country.
And of course, for the University of Tennessee Volunteers, go Vols, beat the Gators.
Kent from Big Brother 2 really set the tone by establishing himself as an outsider, stemming from both where he's from and the obvious generational gap.
Mr. Big Tough Football Beer Drinking Redneck Daddy.
Big personality, strongly opinionated, but he constantly invoked his southern identity to portray himself as fundamentally different from the other house guests.
These people wear on me in the worst way. I'm used to a little bit more gentler, kinder folk in East Tennessee who, instead of throwing you through the plate glass window, they open the door for you.
It's an older, romanticized view of Southerners that, in my opinion, doesn't always check out. And from a social game perspective, it comes across as judgy. Kent was pretty much asking not to fit in.
And the people of East Tennessee, to Rocky Top, to the people of East Tennessee that carry themselves with a quiet compassion, grace, and dignity, send me back there.
Amy ran into similar problems in Big Brother 3, becoming an outsider almost instantly from the emerging majority alliance. And I think a big reason why that is that she also pushed a very old school Southern persona, this time by leaning heavily into these Gone with the Wind references.
I'm Amy, and if I piss you off, frankly, I don't give a damn. You know, we may have accents, but, you know, so did Scarlett, and she was a queen.
But while Kent was grumpy grandpa, what we really remember Amy for was that she put the party in Party Darty.
I've heard that whole thing, there's nothing more unattractive than a drunk woman. Well, too bad.
It annoyed people, it maybe hurt her game, but it was excellent television. And I think most BB fans live for the messiness. For my next pivotal redneck, I couldn't really narrow down to just one character, so I'd just like to take note and recognize that Big Brother 5 is the most country-ass cast of all time. Here's the thing, if you take the 4 pre-jury house guests out, everyone left is from the South except for Karen and Drew. That house was a beautiful symphony of incomprehensible thick accents.
Stuff goes, you got that, but
This is so pretty. Your dog is cute. She got the ugliest damn dogs I ever seen.
They weren't all redneck archetypes, of course. You had Southern goth, Southern gay, Southern stoner. But they did have a guy in a cowboy hat literally called Cowboy, a preview of the more cartoonish things to come.
Metrosexual country boy.
Overall, the redneck was used pretty sparingly in the early seasons. A couple of forgettable early boots like old What's-His-Face.
I'm Jacob and only the righteous will prevail.
And sweet, too pure for this house Steven.
Suck it, bitches.
But it wasn't until Big Brother 11 that the show really started revving up those tractors.
I'm Jordan. No one can resist my southern charm.
Both as a character and as a player, Jordan perfected the art of being extremely nice and likable, which on this particular cast proved to be a winning strategy.
I think Jordan is the sweetest girl and the nicest girl in the house, and I have no problem saying that.
And Jordan's success inside and outside the house kicked off a new era of country aesthetic that, frankly, has never ended. From now on, as the casts were getting bigger, the Rednecks would have 1 or more slots, which we immediately saw the very next season with a country cop, the single funniest house guest to ever play, and the Judd precursor that I think was most similar to Judd.
I've role-played a couple times back in Texas, mainly with horses and cows, you know, wondering what they're saying and what they would say to me.
Lane and Judd's portrayals have a lot of similarities, but most essential was that Lane provided extreme goofball energy in the house and the diary room.
She stabbed him with the syringe of rabies.
It just itches at me that they got picked. How the hell? Give me some Pop Rocks.
A little more on the meathead side of the spectrum.
Muscle milk.
But like Jordan the year before, Southern Charm helped propel another house guest to finale night. In terms of his redneck scorecard though, there's one major area where Lane misses the mark for me.
I work in my family's oil business, but basically I just schmooze people. I take them out golfing.
A true relatable redneck in my book has to be working class. It's so much better for the format of this show.
His dad owns airplanes. Yeah, I said airplanes.
I love Lane to death, don't get me wrong, but I don't think he needs it.
$500,000.
You know, it doesn't mean if you are in the oil field, you're making money. You know, when the economy goes down, oil field goes down big time. So it's a gamble.
Sorry, Lane, but when the revolution comes, you're looking a lot like Doug Dimmadome to me. I had the same problem with Shelley, the corporate leader, the following year. And I don't care how much camo was incorporated into that LSU jersey, you cannot take the native Ohio out of that accent.
Avocado, guacamole.
So that's a brief overview of some memorable Southerners from BB history. And if you take these 5 traits, they sound like a pretty good short description of who Judd is. An offbeat, country-ass goofball with a hell of an accent, who's the life of the party and gets along well with everybody. One interesting thing to note is that Judd was trying to get on the show for 6 seasons, and it begs the question, why now? Well, I think a part of that has to do with what was going on in pop culture in 2013.
In the increasingly bizarre universe known as reality TV, Redneck is red hot.
It was everywhere, to a suffocating degree. If you went into a Walmart around this time, it was basically a Duck Dynasty souvenir shop.
The premiere of Season 2's Duck Dynasty brought in 3.8 million viewers. Honey Boo Boo gets 2.4 million viewers a pop.
These numbers are very big for cable.
I have to imagine that if you're Robin Cass in this moment, the message from the higher-ups and the network was to go full-on hee-haw this year. My man probably nailed the interview just by walking in and saying his name.
My name is Judd.
One of my favorite things about Judd, especially in retrospect, is that he was pretty much a background character in the first few weeks of the game. I say this as someone who, at the moment of making this video, is currently enduring a whole lot of this.
Is this the right time to throw these babies on the barbecue grill?
That redneck pandering can get real annoying real quick, especially when they're central to the action and overdoing it in that diary room. If you look at Judd's early DR numbers, on the other hand, you can see that we barely heard from the guy. The producers actually showed considerable restraint with his character, tapping him for just the occasional dose of goofy comic relief.
These stuffed animals were flying everywhere. I was afraid they would get a concussion.
How bad is that have-not room?
Well, I mean, I don't like airports, and I mean, that's a pretty shady airport back there. So I don't think anybody wants to be in that have-not room this year.
But his low visibility matches up with what he was doing in the game at this point.
Judd has been laying low.
From night one, he really sold the idea that he's not someone to worry about.
And Judd is the first one down.
I was kind of thinking, you know, people might think that I'm the dumbest guy in the house.
And being viewed as the dumb hick is not a bad position to be in. Call it the bless his heart factor.
Poor Judd. I know there's not a lot up here, but there wasn't a lot down here either.
To get a better idea of how the fan base felt about him, I started digging through the archives of the Daily House Guest Rankings poll conducted by Joker's Updates, which, while not perfect, can at least give us a partial picture of who the live feeders were vibing with at different points of the season. And what we can see at the early point in the game is that Judd's popularity grew very quickly. Right around the end of week 2, he catapults to the top of the rankings and dethrones Alyssa for the top spot, which he then held for 3 weeks straight. So why did he become our chosen hero at the moment he also had the least visibility on the show? Well, there's a few reasons for that, but let's start with the most basic. Early moving company stuff aside, the house basically splits into 2 sides. The bullies, aka the blonde entourage, and everyone else. Judd is on the right side of that divide, and not just passively. In a couple of key scenes, we see him standing up against this group, most notably in the fallout after Nick's blindside eviction.
I hope you all hear me too. Go hide in your little rooms like freaking cockroaches that you are.
Nobody's hiding.
You all scramble, all scared.
Nobody's hiding.
Later that same night, during the infamous bed flipping incident, both Howard and Judd come to the defense of the ladies.
Yeah, which is why I'm so shocked that you lied to my face. Judd, get the out of here right now.
This is my house too.
Judd will be aligned with anyone. It's okay. Judd can be your 5th chance of a showman.
Judd, your last call.
Speaking of Aaron, perhaps the most obvious reason is that of the 2 country characters on offer this season, Judd is the good one that isn't saying horribly racist things. When the show finally addresses what's been going on in the house, Judd is in those conversations stating the obvious.
You gotta think though, when somebody says something like that, people see it, you know?
This is important when you consider that Erin's knee-jerk reaction is to lean on her Southern identity as a defense.
Just because I'm Southern and I say things that probably aren't appropriate all the time.
How do you respond to that?
Being Southern, it's a stereotype, and I have said some things, and I do not mean to ever come off racist.
Bad answer. Here we have Judd, who is like the most country person we've ever had, and even he gets it. He's like the antidote to Erin, and his character is at least strengthened by the contrast to her. Number 3 is that even when Judd himself is largely absent from the proceedings, there's a helpful visual indicator to remind you of his good social game.
Twitter has been abuzz with talk about your grizzly bear shirt. We've seen McCrae wear it, we've seen Helen wear it, we've seen just about everyone in the house wear it.
You know, it's kind of my lucky shirt. I brought it in here, and, you know, everybody likes it, so.
Put it in the Hall of Fame with Derek X's hoodie and Dolphin Crash and Baby Make It Nice. This is one of those certified items of power in Big Brother lore. And tracking its movements across the house became a fun activity. In fact, I've done a full count across the season, and of the 28 episodes that Judd is in the game, the bear shirt is on screen worn by somebody in 22 of them. And it transcended the house. Julie's obsessed with it, the fans were obsessed with it. At one point they were going on eBay for like $300. It's absurd and loud and so very much representative of where we were in 2013. Though I do appreciate that it's just an image of a bear and not some stupid camo thing. The final reason Judd suddenly became a main character is when we were least expecting it, he ascended the throne.
Congratulations, Judd. You are the new head of household.
You love to see an underdog rise to power, especially as the season is ramping up into its second quarter. But since he was so well liked, almost everyone is in his ear. Amanda tries to strong-arm him to put up Howard. This weird group tries to form an alliance with him to go after Helen and Amanda. But ultimately, he goes with a more satisfying option.
I've nominated you, Caitlin, and you, Erin, for eviction. Erin, I think you're a Texas tornado, and I don't need to twist my words anymore.
Maybe y'all were sleeping on Judd at first, but now he was finally here to play, continuing the excellent 4-week trend of chipping away at this group. And he was suddenly a contender in competitions as well, coming very close to winning that week's veto. Instead, he lands himself in a solitary confinement punishment, which, while not leading to the sequel to Dan's funeral, is still a pretty funny sequence.
With an alarm clock that goes off every 9 minutes. And I'm just thinking this is gonna be hell. It'll be alright though. I'll just pretend I'm in jail.
The way they have the Bud Light waiting for him still cracks me up. It reminds me of how Evil Dick would almost be done lighting a cigarette before the partition was all the way up. So for these reasons, and again because he was my local hero, I was feeling cautiously optimistic that this absolute goofball from McMinn County was the new dark horse fave of the season. But things were about to take a turn. You could call Judd's blindside the most shocking double eviction in Big Brother history. I'm inclined to agree, at least from the emotional journey of it all. Maybe it's because his slow-burning rise to stardom took 4 or 5 weeks to really put him on the audience's radar. By mid-season, we were only just now getting to know who he was. Oh, speaking of which, can we talk about the special Inglewood segment they aired at the end of week 5 for a second?
Judd being on Big Brother is a huge thing for this small town. It's everybody's talking about it and everybody's having a great time with it.
Oh my god, the accents are so thick. This makes me feel like I'm at a family reunion.
I hope he don't get all big town now.
No, I'm right there. Judd was in the newspaper on the Big Brother show. Walk by and look down and see your son on the front page of the paper. You know, it's instead of a police blotter, it's something else.
I call these back home segments, and maybe I'll talk about more of them in a future video, but Judd's will always be my favorite. Yes, I'm biased, but you can't beat how campy this one gets. The parade, the Judd cutout, the mayor's crazy beard, and of course, this guy.
I'm Eugene. I just walk around town pretty much. Don't know him very well, but he's famous around here.
Oh, it's East Tennessee, all right. But, you know, it functions to let us know that Judd is not just putting on an act. He is a genuine representative of hillbilly country. But this question of redneck authenticity is relevant to why the cloud of suspicion began to form around Judd.
He keeps pushing the whole thing about how he lives in this small town and he only knows like a few people.
He lies about everything else.
Judd is a brilliant, brilliant human being.
You're either a country simpleton or a secret genius. There is no in between. We saw this same thing play out with Donnie the next season.
When you're so genius and you're so smart, you have to be thinking while you're not thinking.
Part of the reason I've talked so much about character visibility and Judd's popularity with the fans is that this season it was codified into the game.
Every week, America will vote for the house guest they believe is playing the best game. And they will make that week's third nomination.
As you probably know, for the first 3 weeks of the season, the MVP twist was basically the Alyssa Award. But during Judd's HOH week, the twist secretly changed to the fans voting directly for who should be the third nominee. And the influx of paranoia around MVP helped paint bigger targets on certain people. First with Howard in week 5, and then with Judd in week 6.
Don't you think it's...
Yeah, 100%. He just acts super weird, and I could just feel it in my gut.
Why? Because if you were in that house, it's kind of obvious that Judd was becoming a fan favorite. Julie asked him a question during almost every live show, and I really take issue with this one in particular.
Twitter has been abuzz with talk about your grizzly bear shirt.
She might as well have said, "Hey guys, did you know Judd is super popular with the fans? I wonder if that might be relevant in some way to the game." Meanwhile, Amanda was settling into her role as the new villain of the season, and the rift that had been developing between them since week 4 dramatically escalates during the week 6 veto.
I'm naughty, baby. I'll be a rat. They call me a rat, I'll be a rat.
Candace, are you talking up there?
She's not.
Candace, why don't you shut your big fat mouth?
Right on cue, Judd also raises his profile a little more by absolutely crushing this competition.
Bro, giggin'! Whoa!
I saw someone on Twitter the other day call the pie eating competition in BB24 home field advantage for Jasmine, and I think that applies here as well, both in the outdoorsy redneck theme and, we saw that professional beer pong setup he had going in his backyard. But I digress. Though he had told Amanda he would use the veto on her, he understandably changes his mind about that mid-competition. It's a Yankee swap, so he gives Jesse the win instead. And I think heading into that week's double eviction, that decision had clearly drawn a line in the sand for Amanda.
My loyalty lies with my alliance, minus Judd.
Casual viewer or not, we all should have seen the warning signs that Judd was not long for this world. And that brings us to double eviction night. It was a rough evening. Candace gets evicted, Gina Marie continues to be terrible, and you're kidding, Erin wins her third HOH. And the veto. That's when Helen moves in for the kill.
Are you back door?
You don't want to do it?
Things move fast during the commercial break. It's hard to tell what's going on the live broadcast. And Judd is equally oblivious.
This is so awkward right now. Judd thinks that we're talking about keeping Jesse here, when in actuality we're talking about Judd leaving.
Then it's time for the veto ceremony. Take note of the audible gasp from the audience and how fully gooped Julie is.
I have to put this person up because they have been playing me and thinking that I would not realize that this was happening, Judd.
All right. Thank you. I'll be back in just a few moments.
And it just keeps getting sadder as Judd famously starts begging for his life.
I can work with anybody, Y'all vote to keep me. I've been loyal to a certain group of people. I guess they didn't give me the same back.
Judd, it's your turn.
Obviously, I know you guys want me to go, but I love every single one of y'all. Not too late. Don't vote how people are telling you. Vote how you want to. And you too, please change your vote. And you too, change your vote. You change your vote.
This is what Judd will always be remembered for. The quintessential example of how cruel this game can be.
Don't do Judd to me, please. Don't do Judd. What we're not gonna do is Judd.
I thought I was gonna have to. You made that joke, and I was like, all right, let's pull out my Judd face.
I had mixed emotions. It was both incredibly sad and also a very compelling episode of television. I contain multitudes. Towards the end of the episode, we see Helen telling Erin,
You are Janelle, dude. You are Janelle. That was so humongous.
if she's Janelle, then we're in hell.
You left in a hurry, and boy did it hurt. But at least you went home in your grizzly bear shirt.
The scrappy underdog who emerged from the shadows, the tragic downfall. The only component Judd needed to complete his quintessential hero's journey was a revenge arc. And he was ready for it, already workshopping his future alliance name during his 2-week break at the jury house.
They need to watch out because I'm gonna be like pest control coming in there, getting rid of a few snakes. Amanda really is the devil.
But since we know that BB Production cares more about good storylines than they do the TV game show they're running, there are 3 very important words we have to address. The most famous conspiracy of Grodner riggage and our most enduring meme. Was Helen pushed off the wall during the battle back so that Judd could come back into the house for his retribution? No, probably not. I think for the majority of fans, it's more ironic meme than an actual conspiracy. I just don't know what percentage of you guys are just having a laugh versus the ones who are actual Helen truthers. So if you do have particularly strong feelings, I encourage you to speak your truth in the comments. And I'll say this, if she was pushed, the more important question is who did the pushing. And for me, my money's on Timmy.
Nah! Oh, Timmy the Turtle! I love you!
Don't look at him!
Where'd that turtle thing go?
Anyway, with Judd back in the game, he promised everyone a clean slate. And his singular focus on taking down Mikranda helped him reintegrate with those left in the house, because the tide was starting to turn. At first, he teams up with Alyssa, who had just won HOH.
We have to do Aaron and then Amanda next. She has to go.
Yes. Oh my god.
Initially going after Aaron, Alyssa tries to put together a plan to backdoor Amanda, but Judd, however, is no help in that week's Zingbot veto.
I can't really concentrate on this competition anymore. Like, I literally thought I was gonna die.
So Amanda picks up her first win, but that's okay, because we finally got to have the Aaron eviction party.
Back down. We have a lot to talk about.
Amanda's tirades in the wake of her veto win are finally the tipping point for pretty much everyone in the house to get rid of her and break up the showmance.
I have a much better shot with you guys than I do with a couple. This is something that needs like a name.
Yeah.
I really do.
But the exterminators. Get rid of rats and snakes.
I like that.
Yes, I'm sorry, Brinchell Army. Alyssa was not included in the group. I get it. I personally would have felt so much better about the exterminators if we could have just made this one substitution. Regardless, Judd was living his best life in week 10, as he now had alliance members for his revenge quest.
I cannot wait for this nomination ceremony. I need some popcorn, I need to pop me some, sit back and just watch the fireworks.
Also, costume punishments are whatever to me now, but I will forever cherish the image of Judd going toe-to-toe with Amanda in a chicken suit.
So y'all run the game, basically? So
What?
Should we all just pack our bags and give it?
Oh, so now I see. Now I see.
Well, you just said that I would go up, basically. You said if both of them won the veto, that I would go up.
There's other people in this house besides you, Judd.
The exterminator's plan came together at the second double eviction. Alyssa had once again changed her mind and was now voting for Amanda to stay, not knowing that Andy was no longer with them.
2 votes to evict Amanda.
But Amanda, get the step in.
In the aftermath, Andy is able to frame Alyssa for flipping the vote, which is important since McCrae wins HOH right after. Andy would eventually credit this as his big move, but for the record, I do want to say that Judd got a hand on the ball at least. Not just by winning the veto, but by making his decision seem like it's motivated by revenge for his first eviction. Suddenly we're rehashing what went down last time.
Of course I'm not going to use this veto on Alyssa, but at the same time, you know, I have to kind of play this up for McCrae.
I had no idea.
Yes, you did, Alyssa.
You did. No,
Well,
I
in the past.
did.
That's in the past.
Judd, it's true. I had no idea.
Everybody but Judd knew about it, Alyssa.
He doesn't use it, and he keeps the alliance obscured from McCrae. Essentially, Judd had fulfilled his purpose and completed his arc. He had re-entered the house, taken down both his and America's nemesis, and formed a Final Four alliance for the endgame. The only problem was that he was in a Final Four alliance with these people.
Maybe I'm the lowest guy on the totem pole in this alliance.
I knew from the first moment the exterminators formed that Judd would be the first casualty, and that these 3 would go on to finale night. For all the same reasons he got evicted the first time. Maybe he would have had a better chance if the alliance was only a temporary 1-vote thing. I personally wanted him to reignite his original Final 2 deal with McCrae, now that he was unshackled from the showmance. And if there was some way they could have pulled in Alyssa, I feel like this entire season could have ended very, very differently. Instead, McCrae's survival was directly tied to Judd's demise at the Final 5 veto.
McCrae, you have won the golden power of veto.
Our last few moments with Judd on the show is pure chaos. First, he quits during the veto comp because he's terrible at puzzles, which kind of pisses everyone off.
Judd quits.
He didn't even try.
Then once he realizes he's going home, he has a little tantrum.
Disrespect your surroundings!
And then caps it all off with a wild-ass speech at the veto ceremony.
Coming back into this game, I was after you, and you know, I'm still after you. Wowzers.
Hell yeah, dude. I love when house guests go full weirdo mode once they realize they're going home. I encourage all freakouts.
I haven't lost it. I just found it, baby.
Look, I never said Judd was a great player, but at least he was memorable. As I look back at Judd's storyline as a whole, he played a lot of different roles. The goofy comic relief, the nice guy in the midst of a challenging, controversial cast, the anti-Amanda crusader that promised to shake up the game. I know he lost some of y'all there at the end. His popularity definitely took a nosedive compared to the early days of the game. It's the price you pay for forming an extremely disliked alliance.
Congratulations, Alyssa.
So that is the story of Judd. Maybe his legacy is somewhat muddled, but for me at least, I've continued to see evidence of his impact all around. Obviously, Big Brother changed pretty dramatically after season 15, and I don't just mean updating the cameras and getting rid of the key wheel. At the risk of oversimplifying, BB16 and beyond has for the most part been defined by things like more convoluted twists, a more goofy tone and editing style, more rehearsed and scripted sounding diary room sessions, and most importantly for this video, an even greater reliance on cartoonish stock character types. On top of that, given the PR nightmare the producers had just survived, there would now be more awareness of and engagement with social media.
It looks like Zanky will live to see another day.
And I think one of the main takeaways the producers had from BB15 was, let's try to cast as many potential Judds as possible, so that if things get shitty, there's at least a hashtag lovable redneck on hand. And that's why there's just so many of them. For comparison, take something like the surfer archetype. There have been a lot of them over the years, from Hayden to Braden and all the rest. But imagine if every season there were like 2 or 3 surfers in the house. That would be wild. That's basically what happens with the country archetype, because they'll have a mixture of characters along the redneck spectrum. You'll have some people from the South who have that country aesthetic in their intro sequence, but otherwise they're mostly normal people. Then in the same house, you'll also have the super cartoony rednecks who are just off the charts. And it's the latter group that I think Judd's popularity paved the way for. So how do Judd's successors stack up? Well, the first one was great. Donnie is like Judd's character fully realized, and in my opinion is the pinnacle of all BB rednecks. He effortlessly fulfills all the usual hallmarks of the archetype in a non-annoying way, with the added bonus of being the nicest human on planet Earth. Game-wise, he was the ultimate underdog, always on the ropes, though they did try to keep him a little protected with the Team America twist. And while Judd's backdooring led to the entire house crying as a group the whole next episode, Donnie had friends and adversaries in tears on an almost weekly basis.
Out of anybody here, everybody knows that Donnie is the kindest man in this world.
It's easy to see why BB fans loved him so much. And unlike Judd, Donnie was able to claim the title of America's favorite, overtaking his fellow house guests that inherited a pre-existing fan base from their more famous sister. Then we had James. While I appreciated the reminder that redneck culture is not exclusive to white people, for whatever reason, James never resonated with me. Maybe it was just too much having back-to-back seasons of Mr. Friendzone and Mr. Pranks. But he had his fans, winning AFP the first time and making the top 3 on his return season. Either way, the 4-year stint of Judd, Donnie, and James sent the message that going redneck was a reliable path to the AFP money. So I'm sure the casting pool was flooded with them. I've been calling this the cornbreadification of Big Brother because that's funny. Also because once this show cast a guy who called himself Cornbread, I knew we had gone off the rails.
I'm more excited than a fat kid in the candy store with a pocket full of money.
And by the way, Cornbread did appear on an episode of Honey Boo Boo, so we've come full circle.
Life can't be taken too seriously. It's all about fun.
I'll be honest with y'all, I barely remember BB19. It feels like a drunken party that I can't recall all the details of. So all that really stands out to me about Jason the rodeo clown was that he caused this,
Oh my God!
and that the whistle nut shirt felt like a direct attempt to recreate bear shirt virality.
Jason, stay right there.
All right.
Hang out. Take a deep breath.
I'd like to just run straight for like a really long time.
And of course there was Sam, who was just
Real crazy!
And while Judd's freakout was only visible on the show right at the very end, Sam was losing it for like 90 days straight.
And I will rip them limb for limb and pull their bottom lip clean up over the back of their head, and they'll regret the day they were born.
So overall, the modern rednecks of Big Brother have not hit the same for the most part. I won't say I'm tired of the archetype because it can work well, but they're too in your face. It's like they can't go one diary room session without reminding us that, yes, they are redneck.
This plan is going so great, I'm more excited than ants with sugar.
The country similes have got to go. It also doesn't help that BB21 gave us racist Minecraft Steve. You cast more and more down-home good old boys, eventually you're gonna get some that are racist. That's just how things work. Maybe that's why they gave us a break from the Rednecks for All-Stars too. But I simply cannot spend any more of my life minutes trying to figure out how that cast came together. I don't think the archetype is going away, even in the post-Robin Cass era, but maybe they're trying to be more careful about who they pick. At any rate, to all future rednecks who make it on Big Brother, my request is simple. Please just stop yelling at me in the DR.
But, just like on a farm, 1 minute the one way, 1 minute the next, and by the time you look at all of them, you don't know what's going on.
Finally, let's talk about why I'm really here today. Even before I started this YouTube channel, I've been working on a mystery. Let's call it Project DNA 2.0. You see, BB15 is in the middle of a stretch of seasons that all involved some kind of paranoia around familial relationships.
I'm Russell Hance's brother, but
My sister.
My sister.
My sister.
my brother Cody.
My sister Vanessa.
Guess what, Zach? You have now become Amanda's cousin.
In the course of a long investigation, I have uncovered another such relationship between Judd and a prominent member of the BB community.
All the conspiracy theories in the house about Judd, that he's, MVP, that Judd is Howie's cousin from season 6, season 7.
No, it's not the Howie thing, though that is extremely funny to imagine.
It's my long-lost brother cousin, Howie.
I know Judd. Judd Nation, baby.
Instead, I am 95% sure that Judd's true long-lost brother cousin is me? I think? Okay, so this is my grandmother. Before she married my grandfather, her maiden name was Darty, and she was born and raised on a farm in Inglewood, Tennessee. Imagine my shock on premiere night.
The last name was the trigger that's like, wait a minute.
Growing up, every year our family made the drive up to McMinn County for a Darty family reunion. A party Darty, if you will. But I never saw these people. I never met a young Judd. But my aunt and uncle have done a bunch of genealogy research, and they always told me, if you ever meet anyone in Tennessee with the last name Darty, you're probably distantly related to them in some capacity. And I can kind of see a resemblance, at least during our mutual country boy bangs era. So from premiere night on, I was rooting for Judd as both my local hero and as my own family. But for years I never knew for sure, and I never reached out to Judd or anything. Because at the end of the day, maybe it's best to just think of these people as fictional characters on your television screen. That is until I became a YouTuber and a certified BB clout chaser. Armed with a new sense of self-importance, last year I set out to finally once and for all confirm my ancestral Judd connection. But before I had the chance to dive into the research, something incredible happened. Let me take you back to September 9th, 2021. I had been awake for about 36 hours after pulling an all-nighter to finish this YouTube video. And immediately after that was double eviction night. I am running on fumes. Julie calls Claire a child of God. We meet Murray. The cookout has done it. Okay, time to finally pass out. But luckily I woke back up a few hours later to see who won HOH. And it's a good thing I did, because while I was scrolling, I noticed this tweet from Judd. If someone wants that bear shirt, I found it yesterday. Best offer, and it's in the mail first thing in the morning. So, I finally made contact. Yeah, I'm 2 for 2. I own DolphinCrash.com, and I own the original bear shirt. I'm gonna shadowbox the hell out of this thing like it's a famous football jersey. It's better than that. It's a family heirloom. Which, by the way, Judd, I know you told me that you didn't think we were related and it was just a coincidence, but honestly, I didn't believe you. And the thing about me is I am willing to go to extraordinary lengths to prove a point. So I hope you don't mind, but I went full BB Twitter CIA mode to a ludicrous degree. My thinking was, if I could reconstruct both Judd's family tree and my own, in theory they should at some point converge. And after weeks of looking through census records, marriage licenses, obituaries, and newspapers, that's exactly what I found. Long story short, my great-great-grandfather, who was born in the 1850s, had a brother, and that brother was Judd's great-great-great-grandfather. I am not sure of the technical term, but I think that makes us long-lost brother cousins. Our ancestors had no way of knowing that one day their descendants would reconnect with each other via a piece of reality TV memorabilia. And this was my rambling 40-minute way of letting you all know that I am now the keeper of the bear shirt. I'll keep it safe. It is a little small for me though. There's no way it fits.
There's no way it fits!